Hi, Facebook Live, and welcome. This is Kellie Davis, and I'm running for Oceanside City Council District 3. And this week, our series is Education, and again, what's on the ballot? 'Tis the season to be voting. That's what this is. And I'm here with my amazing campaign manager, and I'm also delighted and must welcome my newest friend, another community activist, all the way from the big city of dreams, Vista, California, Mustafa Nizam. Welcome, brother. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And we wanted to definitely have Mustafa on the show because I'm fast seeing that he's everywhere. And a lot of the people that I know in North County, just in general, not just Oceanside, he is very active. He's certainly active in the Council of American Islamic Relations. Did I say that, Mustafa? Did I say that
yes.
correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, we just want to catch up and talk about, this is, the ballots are going out this week. Venus has already started this wonderful campaign. Venus, can you tell us a little bit about the campaign that you're doing right now?
The Voter Education Week?
Yes, talk about that a little bit.
Awesome, I'd love to. So this week is National Voter Education Week, which is a wonderful nonpartisan campaign that focuses on, educating everyone on what's on their ballot and making sure we're bridging the gap between individuals registering to vote and actually casting their ballot. There's a lot of steps that come about in between, just starting to register to vote and actually casting your ballot. So we're making sure all those steps in between are met and you have the perfect education on how to do so. And not only are you being educated, but you're also being educated enough so that you can go out and be an ambassador within your own community on how to vote. And you can, share around with your own community members, your family members, and make sure that they know the steps on how to vote by mail, or if it's remotely or in person. So this is a wonderful week. Today is Monday. So Monday, the hashtag is Vote Ready. So we're making sure that we're registered to vote. Check your registration. Even if you already checked your registration, double check your registration. You never know what could happen. And then Tuesday, tomorrow, we'll also have another hashtag ready, and we'll have another post where everyone can have interactive educational steps on making sure that you're registered to vote.
Fantastic. So this today is hashtag Vote Ready, correct? Great. So hashtag Vote Ready. I can't think of a better segue back to Mustafa because he is definitely all about that. And one of the things that our campaign certainly encourages, and again, this is not an endorsement. This is only two fast becoming friends talking about and sharing knowledge about the importance of voting. And also, I have just been very curious about Mustafa. So I have to be quiet now and let him tell me a little bit about himself and why get active in politics and all the wonderful things you're doing.
So thank you so much, Kelly. So I've been a resident of Vista since 2004, resident of North County. I spent a lot of my time in North County organizing different communities, working with different activists. My wife actually was one of the founders of the North County Women's March. I helped her with that. I helped out Max Disposti at the LGBTQ Center in his actions. Also, Mosque Against Trafficking. My buddy Yusuf Miller out in Escondido is the founder of that. I belong to a lot of different organizations, and they're mostly volunteer organizations. I don't get paid for any of this. I love to do it. I love to help my local candidates get elected, especially my grassroots candidates who often don't have the money or the time to hire people and really get out there to do it themselves. So I like to help new candidates. I like to help women. I like to help women of color get into office to represent who we are. Because often we are underrepresented. Not often, but all the time we are underrepresented in politics, especially.
Can you share a little bit? I know you work with a lot of, like you said, a lot of different campaigns, a lot of different people. Certainly, we mentioned CARE, the Council of American and Islamic Relations. what do you do for them in particular? And
So
can you,
I actually work for the LA chapter. We have chapters all over California, all over the country. Our main office is in Washington, D.C., but CARE LA is the largest chapter. I'm the Valley Outreach Manager. My job is actually in the Valley. My area goes from North Los Angeles all the way to San Luis Obispo and all the way across to Lancaster. So it's a giant area. Fortunately, because of this pandemic, I'm actually working from home in Vista. You know, I do miss my area, but just because of the lockdowns, and we got to be safe. I'm fortunate to be able to work from home during this election. I did a lot of work this year on the census. CARE California actually did a lot of work on the census. We reached out to about 60,000 voters. We spoke to about 18,000 voters and about 60, we reached out to 60,000. We spoke to about 18,000. About 16,000 said, yes, they already took the census or they will. And we reach out to hard to count communities. That's community of color. That's communities of refugees, new Americans. We want to make sure that they get counted because this determines how much money our communities get for the next 10 years. So we want to make sure we're counted. We want to make sure our communities that are often underrepresented get the money that they deserve.
absolutely. And I think it's come to an end now, correct? The census, or is that?
Yeah, so it's going to end on October 31st. There was a lot of back and forth lately with the census. The Trump administration would file a lawsuit to end it on October 1st, and then the federal judge struck that down, and she's going to let it go on until October 31st. Then the Commerce Secretary came out and said that no, it's going to be October 5th. So right now we're playing it that it's going to be October 31st, and we're going to continue our work until then.
Venus, if you can put one of the census links also. I know you probably are way ahead of me, but this is what we do, Mustafa. We like to share information as we go, and so thank you for that. So one of the other reasons why we had Mustafa on, and those who know me or maybe those who don't, I worked at a nonprofit television station here in Oceanside, and I did a lot of political programming. And one of the things, integrity, is when we decide to talk about proposition and the cons. And this week, so what's on the ballot, we talked about some of the measures last week here in Oceanside. So this week we're talking about the state propositions. And has been kind enough to join us today and give us his position on Proposition 15. He's in favor of the position. And Venus, by the way, doesn't mean that our campaign is supporting one position or the other. We are just here to present what the rebuttal is to what Mustafa is going to share with us. So Mustafa, if you can just enlighten. One, Venus is going to read the proposition first as it's written. And then Mustafa, we will speak again with you about your feelings about it. So Venus, if you could please just read the proposition.
Awesome. Prop 15 requires commercial and industrial properties to be taxed based on market value and dedicates revenue. And again, maybe I'll read it one more time. Prop 15 requires commercial and industrial properties to be taxed based on market value and dedicates revenue.
And where are you getting that from so that everyone knows where you're not just making it up?
Right, I will put the link below, but the city of Oceanside has the ballots and everything that's going to be on your ballot, from your measures to your propositions.
Thank you very much. So Mustafa, if you'd like to just chat a little bit about your perspective of Proposition 15.
Yeah, so I am fully in support of Proposition 15, particularly yes on Proposition 15. And the reason for that is when Venus was talking about closing about commercial and industrial properties paying their fair share on fair market value. There's so many giant corporations here that don't pay their fair share. Okay, so they're paying their taxes through the loopholes on Proposition 13, where they're only paying taxes on their 1978 value. So just imagine this: a giant corporation like Chevron, their headquarters, they bought their property back in 1978. They're going to be paying taxes on that, and because of the loopholes in Proposition 13, even today, after, even after they sell that to a new owner, something like that, they'll constantly be paying 1978 values, and that deprives our state of much needed funding. And then who suffers is our communities and our schools, and you've seen that. It's been a decline since 1978 for our schools. You see overcrowded schools. You see our per pupil spending. Just imagine this. Our per pupil spending in California, in the United States, we're ranked 39th out of 50 states. So you're looking at the 6th largest or the 5th largest economy in the world. I don't know exactly which one it is, but they have, they spend about $10,000 less per student than New York. They spend less money than Maryland, even Wyoming, even Nebraska. They spend net less on their students than that. And that's because of the lack of funding that we're getting because of these loopholes that these giant corporations have been employing CPAs and lawyers to exploit every loophole in Prop 13. So the idea on Prop 15, yes, on Prop 15, is to close these loopholes and have these corporations pay their fair share of taxes going forward. We're not worried about the 42 years that they enjoyed not paying their fair share of taxes. They've already benefited from that. That's cool. Let's just pay going forward, pay your fair share of taxes. And that's gonna bring in $12 billion a year to our state of California. That's about $354 million to several counties, even as small as Riverside County. Now, LA County is the largest county, so it's going to get about 1.6 billion. But just to break it down by school district in North County, let me give you some figures here. So we have Escondido Unified School District getting $13.7 million every year. San Marcos, $12,421,000. We got Oceanside getting $11.5 million for Oceanside Unified School District, and Vista getting $14.4 million. That's much needed funding, and these funds are going to go to the communities that need it the most. To bring more equity to our school system and to our communities.
Okay, well, thank you. And again, this is not an endorsement, and this is also means that we're not in favor or against measure. We are just doing our diligence in presenting both sides. So Venus, if you could read the rebuttal and what site each place that you got this from for Mustafa.
Awesome. So according to Voters Edge, there's about 4 different arguments that opponents say. Opponents say that Prop 15 would trigger the largest property tax increase in California's history. They also say that additional costs will ultimately raise prices for consumers. They also say that it will make it harder for people to start small businesses and that it'll require a huge cost to administer. So also, Voters Edge says that a no vote means property taxes on commercial properties would stay the same. Local governments and schools would not get new funding. And then also—
Let me correct you for a second, Venus, I'm sorry. So this is from the Voters Edge website. This is not what the Voters Edge is saying. We just have to make sure we're very clear when we talk about this. Sorry to interrupt, but I just don't want to mislead anybody and say that Voters Edge said this. It's a wonderful site to go for information, and this is what they've collected as a rebuttal, but is not necessarily what they say. So go ahead, Venus.
Correct. Again, this is voteredge.org, and I'll also put the link in the comments below. And then also from a PolitiFest webinar that we sat on, we gathered some other information, which they referred to Prop 15 as a so-called split roll tax. So you might also be hearing it referred to as such. And opponents say, from PolitiFest sources, opponents say that we can't do this because of COVID, and that this is absolutely the wrong time to make people pay higher taxes, because raising taxes will increase the cost of everything people buy, like food, gas, and healthcare. Prop 15 will hurt small businesses that are struggling during the current pandemic. And again, this is information from PolitiFest, and I'll put the links from PolitiFest down below also.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to any of those, Mustafa?
Sure. There's a lot to unpack there, and I do look at Voters Edge because it gives a nonpartisan view on. You can read both sides. You can read yes and no on Prop 15. So one thing that that's important to note is the $12 billion that I mentioned. Only 12% of only 10% of the businesses will raise that $12 billion. So let me say this again. So the $12 billion will be raised by, will raise 92% of the $12 billion. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's not going to affect every business. If the businesses are already paying their fair share of taxes, they're exempt. It's also important to know that residential properties are exempt, condos are exempt. Also, apartment buildings are exempt as well. And when you talk about the small businesses, currently small businesses don't get tax refunds or get to write off any type of taxes on when they buy equipment and things like that. Now, Prop 15 will give on Prop 15 will give a $500,000 tax credit for small businesses to be able to enjoy benefits. Like, let's say there's a small farm, they have farming equipment, they're able to write off $500,000 of that equipment. If there's a, let's say an insurance agent, he needs new copy machines and things like that, or if there's a printer, a local printer that needs to buy a new printing press, which are very expensive, they could write off up to $500,000 every year on that. So it's actually very beneficial for small businesses. And, you know, it allows them to compete with these giant corporations. But now these giant corporations, they have to pay their fair share, you know. And like I said before, we're not asking them to pay backwards. We're only asking them to pay forward.
Understood. So if you could just reiterate, I also sat on a Prop 15 about a month ago, and again reiterating what this particular, granted he was a tax assessor, and of course he was against the measure, and he was saying he felt like we could probably come up, not probably, he said we could come up with perhaps some other ways to fund the spot that we're in with our education, and said that, again, if you could just answer this again, that doing it now, like perhaps, you know, some other time it might have been better, but now because of the COVID-19 situation, what was your response to that, the timing of it not being right, perhaps?
Well, we've been working on this proposition for more than 12 years. You're talking about when we had the Make It Fair campaign several years ago, that didn't pass. Now Proposition 15 came up, and it is a constitutional vote, right? So we collected signatures just to get this on the ballot. So the people of California have the choice to vote yes or no on it. You know, no one's telling you to vote one way or another. We present arguments on both sides. You have the right to do your research and listen to people who have studied this. And you vote yes or no on this.
Understood. Are there any other things that, not necessarily what's on the ballot, but you already talked about the census, but is there anything else? Because again, this is voting and sites that you'd like to mention, or anything else that you'd like to share with the people?
So there's a couple things. We need to really support our local candidates. That's the most important. The city council is who determines, you know, when we walk out our door, it's the city council and their decisions that they make that determine, you know, what's good for us in our communities. That's going to affect us more in our communities than the president of the United States will, right? So you want to make sure you register to vote. You want to make sure you go out there and vote, or mail in your ballot as we have this year, you know, because of COVID and everything. But you can still vote in person. There's other places. There's places, voting centers all across the county that you can vote in person. The nice thing is the Secretary of State has set up their website where you could track your ballot. I got a text yesterday saying that my ballot was already mailed to me. It should arrive in 5 to 7 days. And once I fill out the ballot, send it in, I always take a picture of it. I send it in, and then it's tracked all the way back, and it's tracked up to the point where it's recorded. So it's a very nice feature. You can go on sos.ca.gov and sign up. I like to sign up text messages, but you could also sign up by email. They'll email it to you or text it to you, and you'll know exactly where your ballot is. That's very important. It's very important to encourage our young people to vote, our first-time voters, to get out there and vote. Often we're not heard, and we're end up being represented by people who don't represent us.
You know, and I have to reflect as you were speaking, because you've been active in voting and all of this for so long as a community activist. Gosh, what a time we're in. I mean, when you think about voting, have you ever, I mean, what must your perspective be during a time like this when it comes to having seen the fullness of before and here we are?
Yeah, you know,
What do
like
you
in
think?
2018, my wife ran for city council in Vista, and I ran her campaign. It was so, what I like to do is I like to knock on strangers' doors and talk to them. You know, I don't mind doing that. People sometimes don't like doing that, and that's something in this pandemic that we can't do, right? We go lid drop, we hang something on their door, and hopefully they'll read it. Maybe they'll take it right to the recycle bin. Who knows, right? But that's one thing I really miss is the human connection of going out there and talking to a stranger and introducing myself, introducing the candidate, and you know, presenting our side, and hopefully they'll make the right decision.
Absolutely. You know, it has been, I'm looking forward to getting to know you even more, Mustafa. It has been a joy just to get to know you and see, you know, people out there, because it really takes, the more and more I listen to PolitiFest and some of the other things, the people that they have speaking, they continuously have been saying things like, it's going to take small groups of people, and you know, we're going to have to strategize different ways. We're going to have, and I feel finally like, okay, this is a good time for me to come out, because this is how, you know, you and I and Venus, a lot of us who've always been very grassroots, this is like, yeah, this is kind of what we're saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so one of the things, unfortunately, we're in a time of a pandemic, and there's no joy about that whatsoever. What I am encouraged about is that it is in some ways forcing, unfortunately, or maybe exploring is a better way of putting us getting together as a community and coming together on common soil, as opposed to being so divisive because you're with this candidate, you think this way, but our basic needs need to really be met now as a community. So that's one of the things I'm encouraged about.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's one thing that I had to teach myself, and with a lot of encouragement from my wife, is there's no perfect candidate. You'll never get everything you want out of a candidate, although you want that. Some of their mistakes are bigger than others, but that's at the point where you have to hold them accountable, even if it's your candidate. If it's your candidate and they make a bad decision, especially that's bad for the community, you need to let them know, and you can't be afraid to let them know, because in the end, we pay their salary, they work for us.
Absolutely. So I want to thank Mustafa Nizam for coming on our show today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you, Venus. Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. And thanks, Facebook Live, for joining us. Join us tomorrow, and we will see you and have a beautiful night. Thank you.